I don't know what Frogger's belly looks like. I don't know what the front bumpers of the cars that Frogger is dodging look like. I don't know what the entrance to the home that Frogger aims to walk into looks like. I certainly don't know what's inside of Frogger's briefcase, and I don't know what job Frogger could possibly have or why Frogger is in such a hurry to get there. And all of that's on purpose. There are many things that Frogger doesn't want you to see. The 1981 arcade classic is defined by this top-down point of view, and there are no exceptions here. Frogger is filmed from an orthogonal top-down perspective. Its camera doesn't move. Adversaries may come and go, but the setup always stays the same. And that's what makes Frogger so distinct. Even if you change all the objects, people can still recognize the game's inherent DNA. This was famously proved, of course, in a 1998 episode of Seinfeld. But Frogger's approach to framing isn't just recognizable, it's also what makes the game so much fun to play. So let's think about how Frogger's viewpoint influences its gameplay. Frogger is an incredibly simple game, but its mechanics are actually quite powerful. In any game, you only know and can do so much. This is why game designer Kieran Nolan talks about game design as being this balance between challenge and control. This 100% makes sense. You want to be able to control outcomes, but not be able to automatically win every single time. And in Frogger, the camera is both a tool of challenge and control. On the one hand, it gives you a static view of the field of play. You can see the entire area. Like a general, you're in control. But there's also challenge. You can't escape this view, you can't look at things from a different angle, which is not to say that you need more information. The original Frogger's large frame of reference actually told you an awful lot, but the lack of an alternative is still unsettling. This dynamic also builds tension, and not just tension because you want to win instead of putting another token in the arcade, but tension because your frame of reference is limited, and this becomes an even more pronounced effect in later incarnations of Frogger, where the frame was much less generous and you were zoomed in on the action. You couldn't really see everything anymore. Every Frogger game is ultimately about its camera, because the camera determines how much you can know, and everything follows from that. Frogger's tension and gameplay lacks a relief valve, and all that arcade fun is down to its static frame. So if Frogger's approach to framing and tension is so effective, why don't more games do it? Well, the short answer is that some do. Oh My God, Are You Alright uses the aesthetic of Frogger to examine the experience of getting over being hit by a car. It uses both Frogger's visual language and absorbing part of its plot. And then there's Hotline Miami, which films its neon, hyper-violent world from straight overhead. In this case, the plot has nothing to do with Frogger, obviously, but the mechanics build a similar tension. Only Hotline Miami adds a wrinkle to Frogger's recipe. See, even in the most zoomed-in version of Frogger, things always happen on screen. Threats came from off-screen, but you eventually saw them coming. But in Hotline Miami, you can get shot from off-screen. There's a world outside your viewport, and it is scary. This wasn't an option at the time of Frogger, but now we can have all of the arcade game's tension with added challenges. And all this speaks to the enduring appeal of a restrictive frame, not only from overhead. Side-scrollers like Karo Blaster and Side Motion achieve a similar trick, but from a different angle. So the placement of the camera really matters in video games, and perhaps the biggest proof of this is Crossy Road. Now, Crossy Road is basically Frogger, but updated for current sensibilities. Its angle is no longer orthogonal, but is similarly restrictive, and its existence and wild popularity is a tribute to Frogger's legacy. One fan of Crossy Road even went so far as to make a video reimagining it as a first-person game, and the whole experience is different. Once again, the placement of the imaginary camera, that's what matters. Even Crossy Road developer Andy Sum gets this. He's admitted that crossing a road itself, I'm not sure what's too fun about that. So how do we make crossing the road fun? How do we make anything fun? We do it with challenges and restrictions and suspense, and that's exactly what Frogger's framing did and what games are still learning from it today. So what do you think? Is it the fixed overhead camera that makes games like Frogger and by extension Hotline Miami a lot of fun, or is it some other ineffable quality that makes them work? Don't say shooting dudes, but please hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week. Last week we talked about whether or not Mario and Sonic will always be enemies based on their shape and body size. Let's see what you had to say. Joseph N says that the reason that many consider Mario games critically superior to Sonic games these days is because of the transition from 2D to 3D games, which is a really good point and ladders back up to my larger point about character design. To Joseph's idea, I think that Mario has been very fortuitous in the way that he evolved. So, as I talked about before, his character design was greatly affected by the graphical graphical limitations of the NES, and it just so happened that this turned out to convey his amicable personality. Also, Mario's jump translated from the early arcade games to platformers to games like Mario 64 and so on. Sonic, on the other hand, wasn't quite so lucky. SEGA basically had to try and reinvent Sonic's game design into this sort of like over-the-shoulder racing game, while Mario still contained the essence of what made Mario, which is jumping and movement in 3D space. So it was a little bit of a tough break. Not Joe, or possibly not Joe, I don't know, it was in parentheses, I just read it as it comes out to me, seems to approve of a point that we made at the end of the episode, which is that diversity in body types and characters can lead to innovative gameplay. And that's a big reason that we've beat the diversity drum so hard in the past. Yes, I think it's good to be fair to everyone, but it's also really, really good for games, and let me explain. When games feature characters of different genders and ethnic backgrounds and body shapes, it has the potential to expand the stories that games tell. There's perspectives that you see from the stories, the values that are inherent in their systems, and sometimes even the mechanics themselves, which is the whole point of the Mario and Sonic episode. So I'm not saying that the big burly dude archetype is totally worthless. In fact, just the opposite. If you look at a game like Gears of War, for example, the big fellas actually help inform the nature of how you play it. They help you keep track of the characters on screen. That means that's just one end of the spectrum, which means that there must be another end of the spectrum where, there are smaller characters that have different body shapes, that have their own benefits and lead to very, very different styles of gameplay. So there's much room for expansion in the medium in this regard, and I'm really excited to see where it takes us next.